actually a show that's going kind of a subject that's going big around the world, not just in America. And that's about Sean Combs, Puff Daddy. So most people know him as P. Diddy now. And what's going on with his sex trial. He's in Brooklyn House of Detention. And I want to dive right into it. So the people that don't know me, I'm John Elite. Hit the subscribe button. We're almost at 100,000 followers. Hit that button, follow me, follow my Instagram, follow my TikTok, follow me on Facebook. But let me dive into it. So the people that don't know a lot about Puff, he's an icon in the music industry, and he's been accused of sexual crimes of 100 or more victims that attended his parties. And let me give you a little background how Puff started. You know, people know him from Biggie Small and partnership with him, with Mace in the old days. But they don't know where he really started. He started in Harlem at 3 years old. His father was Melvin Combs. Melvin Combs was involved with the famous Nicky Barnes, Lucas, and the Harlem crew of drug dealers. He was a lower level than those guys, but he was also involved with New York Freddie, who was one of the biggest gangster mobsters, black mobsters out of Harlem in those days. And his father, Sean's father at the time, was Melvin was killed. He was killed because he was accused of being an informant by guys like Freddie Myers. Now, the guy that brought in Melvin into the mix of the Harlem drug dealers, the Harlem gangsters, the guy that brought him in, they asked him supposedly to kill him. He was supposed to meet his girlfriend that night. He was in a cab in Central Park, and he was blasted. That same guy who blasted him, killed him, was one of the guys, ball-bearing guys that carried the casket and actually was crying. I don't know if it was an act or he killed him because if he didn't, he was going to get killed. Or if he was crying as, just a cover that he didn't, kill him. But at that time, after he kills Melvin for being an informant and giving up information, supposedly there was police on the take that took a $10,000 payoff and brought the actual audio tape and transcripts of Melvin's double-crossing of his crew that he was working for, and that was passed around. Then the order was put down to kill him. A couple of years later, Sean moves into Mount Vernon, New York, and gets the nickname Puffy. When he was playing football, he used to puff up his chest, I guess, breathing exercises or just breathing out of nerves, or I'm not sure why that he did that, but he got the nickname Puffy, and that's where that nickname came from. So he had a past that I wasn't even aware of until I started digging in, that he comes from a gangster family. Now, one of the things I want to do is say a condolence to Mark Ryder, who just died. He had a life sentence in prison for drug dealing. He was a big supplier, and he was involved with Nicky Barnes also in the heroin business, and a good friend of mine. His son was a friend of mine who was killed, never found his body, and Mark was trying to get out on compassionate release recently, and the judge denied him, stating that he was a danger to the community, danger to a prosecutor. Supposedly there was threats made that he was going to kill a prosecutor and some of the agents that were involved. Me, I never bought that. I knew Mark not to be violent. Yes, a drug dealer. He was involved with some serious guys in Harlem, like I said. But Nicky Barnes is one of those guys, actually, that ended up cooperating against Mark Ryder and gave him his first jail sentence when he did, I believe he did about 6 years. And to continue that, he was involved with other guys, a guy, George Washington, that I knew pretty well. He was also involved with these people. Another person, Jackson. And so Sean had connections to the mob world since he was a kid. And now step forward into the future. He's now in Brooklyn House of Detention, facing life sentences, accused by many women and some men of sexual assault, sexual rape. And the prosecutor on that case is the new kid on the block that worked for Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States. He was a judge, and Damian Williams he clerked for him. He is the United States Attorney at the Southern District of New York who's prosecuting his case, not only his case, but our Mayor Eric Adams' case. So he's all of a sudden prosecuting some major, major cases. I guess the Attorney General, and they have a lot of confidence. I believe he was a Harvard grad. I could be wrong, but I think Damon Williams was a Harvard graduate. And this case is iconic because of some of the things that Sean has been accused of over the years. One of them is the murder of Biggie Small himself. That investigation, there was a lot of rumors from years ago till today that he had Biggie killed because he owned the production rights of Biggie if he was killed. Now, people accuse people all the time. Is that factual? I don't have facts on that. And I'm not going to accuse him myself of killing Biggie. Does it make sense because of the money value? You're talking about millions, close to billions of dollars because of how great an icon and singer and entertainer Biggie was. So those were one of the things that brought Puff on the scene of being investigated, being looked at by the police. Besides Biggie, Sean got himself into more trouble back in a nightclub in the late 90s when he was also involved with Jennifer Lopez. And there was a shooting. He got into an argument, a dispute with somebody at the club, and he ends up shooting a woman in the face. She got shot in the nose by accident in the face. Her personal testimony was that Puff is the shooter. There wasn't anybody else but him. It was a shooter. Supposedly, the gun that he shot her with, I believe 3 people shot at that club in the late 90s. Jennifer Lopez supposedly had it in a bag. She had gun residue on her body and I believe on her hand. I'm not sure why her hand, she didn't fire the gun, obviously. She was also arrested and held for 14 hours and not charged and released. Her mother made a lot of statements warning Jennifer Lopez, at that time everybody knows her as J-Lo, not to be involved with Sean, that he was trouble and problems. There was also rumors that there are tapes, sexual tapes that involved Jennifer Lopez at Sean's house, at his parties, and she was vulnerable to that, whether she had knowledge of those tapes, whether it was just tapes with her and him. Again, that's speculation by the media, speculation by journalists, and I don't have that information. But I do know one of the reasons Ben Affleck, when he ends up marrying her, is their first separation was because of the rumors of these tapes and some of the things that went on. And again, I'm not going to accuse. I'm a guy that was in trouble myself, and there's so many rumors out there about what I did criminally and what I didn't do, and you hear a lot of people jump on the bandwagon and attack people when they're down, and that goes for Mayor Adams also. I'm not going to attack these guys. Our justice system means you go to court, find out if you're guilty or not. Maybe you're guilty of some things, not other things. Maybe you're guilty of all of them, but they're going to have their day in court. Puff is adamant about not taking a plea deal, which is surprising to me because there's videos out there. And because there's sexual videos out there, again, doesn't mean they were forced, these people, and they're being accused. He's being accused of drugging people. He's being accused of trying to put blame on his bodyguard, his driver. He tried to pay them to take the weight for the shooting at the club. None of us know what's accurate, what isn't. I guess when you get the testimony from some of these people when this case comes out. And this is a more serious case because of who's handling it it's not a state case, it's a federal case. And you have the top guns of the Southern District of New York, Damon Williams, that is handling the prosecution in this case. And then you have, to highlight this case, you have huge icons of actors like Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm just going to name some of them for you. Ashton Kutcher. You have Jennifer Lopez, I just mentioned. Justin Bieber, that supposedly may be a victim in these parties. Jay-Z and Beyonce accused. Neo is accused. Neo Campbell, Kardashians, Usher, and the list goes on. Those are just some. Whether they're involved in these parties, well, people are trying to implicate them in having something to do with pressuring people and be involved. I mean, this is all going to come out. It's going to be seen. I know that there is tapes out there that somebody in Hollywood has, they're shopping it around for big money to sell this tape with some huge names. They say that are bigger than the names I just listed there, that have involvement, that'll implicate them seriously in some of what's going on. And a lot of it is some of the more serious charges, obviously, that just came out is they're being accused of sexual assault and exploitation, pedophilia of a 9-year-old, of a 12-year-old, of a 14-year-old. So it changes the playing field from being, adults just having swinger parties and having a good time. And, it's not people using drugs. It's, whether they use them on their own or the accusation of Puff slipping them drugs without them knowing. That's how they would prove that, and how Damon Williams is building this case. Is it just through testimony from some of the Hollywood elites? Is it because the videotapes are going to show that they are slipping drugs into their drinks? Or is it voluntarily used drugs? If it's voluntarily used drugs, I don't see how they can charge him with this stuff. But if it isn't, and there's actual proof, and there's people that sold those drugs to him are going to have testimony saying that he said he was going to put those drugs in people's food, drinks, or otherwise. If people were tied up, beat up. I know there's a damaging tape that we all know about when Puff was with his girlfriend in a hotel and she was going into an elevator and he came running out with the towel wrapped around his waist, and he beat her, he stomped on her, he dragged her by her hair. I mean, it doesn't look good, obviously, when people see that kind of violence on a female, regardless what would happen. You have a lot of people that are going to judge what he did or didn't do by that tape. And let me make this clear. So I'm going to be careful how I word this. I'm not in agreement at all of him hitting that woman like that, stomping on her, dragging her, pulling her by her hair and dragging her down the hall back into the room. And they settled that case fairly quickly. But because he did something like that and he assaulted a girl doesn't mean that necessarily that he's guilty of the rest of these crimes. So, and I know people are going to judge. There's a lot of activity around him. Like I said, the shooting at the club, his past with his dad. So, that doesn't shine good light on his family background. The sexual parties, he's an adult. He can have 5 women in a room with him if he wants and 10 guys. They can all make their adult decisions. But when it comes to the accusations of children, now you're coming into a different category of something very serious of abuse, kidnapping, and a whole boatload of other charges that brought in this RICO case. I don't know exactly how many charges he was indicted for, or if there's going to be a superseding indictment, how many witnesses they have. But this is probably one of the biggest cases, I think, from somebody in a spotlight that's known in the music world as an icon. And, he did a lot of music with guys like Mace. And if anybody doesn't know who Mace is, back in years ago, he was a very popular guy that got into gospel music, and he moved away from the music industry and the music industry and hip-hop world, in the rap world, and he went into gospel music. So there's another side also of Puff that was known of him helping a lot of people over the years, and there's a lot of people that do speak up with him. And J-Lo is, if she was involved and carried that gun, then she's just as guilty as he is. She can't just point fingers at him because she's an adult and she had the choice not to carry that gun. And she chose to carry that gun, and the excuse is, well, it was my boyfriend at the time and he made me. That doesn't fly. You make your own decisions in life, and people play the victim. I'm not one of those guys that are okay with that, that victim status. I don't do it myself. I shoulder whatever I did in my past, and I move on. So hopefully for his sake, a lot of these accusations aren't true. And hopefully for the children's sake, that they weren't sexually abused, God forbid. And any of us that have a heart or human beings, we would never want to see a kid being abused or forced drugs or tied up or beat up. And there's so many accusations around this case. It's incredible how much publicity this is going to get as it moves forward. He was been denied bail twice. He tried to get bail twice. And I guess because of his financial situation, he left the country on his own jet. So I guess he's obviously a flight risk. So that's probably one of the other underlying reasons he's not going to get a bail. After the Epstein sexual cases and all the people that were involved with him, I did a video about that if somebody wants to watch it. I believe I had about 2.5 million views on that video. Epstein, but we never found out who are the other people that were involved. I want to see if we have the same standard in the Sean Combs case. Why is it that we still don't know who was with Maxwell and Epstein, and yet everybody's so fast to come out with the Puff Daddy videos and names and of some of these people in Hollywood? Is it because you're talking about the elite politically that are involved with Epstein, and is there the same standard? And since Merrick Garland is who appointed Williams as the prosecutor, I want to know if he's going to keep the same standard for Puff as he did with Epstein. And we're still waiting for the names of Epstein's co-conspirators. You can't be molesting and child trafficking kids on Epstein Island without having people with you. Where are all these people's names? So I'm curious about that. And I'm also curious, how did these guys get a fair trial in New York? How does Mayor Adams get a fair trial in New York? And so you have two huge cases right now being prosecuted at the same time. And if our justice system is going to be fair, then that's got to be looked at. And, our journalists need to talk about, how do these guys get a fair trial in a city where their names are tarnished this way in the media, day and night, without any facts. So, I'm used to hearing, for example, I got pulled over yesterday by a state trooper in Jersey, and we always hear bad stories about them. And the guy was a gentleman. He gave me a warning, and I was wrong. I was swerving a little bit. I wasn't paying attention. I was reading something. And, nice guy, pulled me over, asked for license registration. But usually you get the bad end only is what I'm getting at. You don't get anybody telling you these stories when you get the good cops, and he's a gentleman, and he didn't care about my past. Obviously, he knew about me. And he just judged me for the moment, which I respected, and I thanked him. And the same here. I want to see these guys not get judged because they're famous. I want them to get judged by the evidence of the case. And they should get a fair case. Everybody knows I'm an advocate for Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, I believe, got railroaded in New York because it was not possible he could get a fair case. No different with these guys. I don't think they could get a fair case. And while I'm on the subject, Kamala Harris, I'm not a big fan of hers, and she's the one that indicted Michael Jackson for pedophilia, which I never agreed on. And I think a lot of these prosecutors use these names because they're icons and they want to further their career. Chris Christie did it to the Duca brothers. So this is starting to become a pattern of prosecutors using big names to make their career. And Donald Trump was very outspoken about Michael Jackson because he knew him since he was a kid. He was around Donald Trump's kids, and he didn't believe he was guilty or he's a pedophile. I still don't believe he was a pedophile. I don't believe he did it. And the same thing with, and I'm going to bring up one more case so people can look into this stuff, is Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, one of the greatest fighters ever. And forget about the fight business. He's a wild guy in his personality because he's out on the street and he was fighting and he had a crazy temper. But that doesn't make you guilty of rape. And I think a lot of these prosecutors take these cases and they abuse them because these guys are in public figures and they're high in high society and they're in the tabloids on a regular basis. And when a prosecutor like Alan Bragg wants to make a name for himself, he goes after Donald Trump. When a Chris Christie wants to go after, because at the time it was 9/11, right after, you go after the Duca brothers, and not because they're Albanian. They had no overt acts of violence. And I spoke briefly to my writer about it. He covered that case. I got information, not directly, but indirectly from one of the agents on the Duca case also, and he believed they were innocent. So I'm talking from a factual and a research basis, a journalist basis. And there's one other guy, Oscar Lugo, who has become a very good friend of mine, who got 300 and something years by a rogue police officer that they wouldn't use on the stand. He's Puerto Rican, and he is in Montgomery Township, PA. I've been following his case. I'm trying to help him get out. I talk about him a lot. And we had a judge that was vindictive. Is it because he was Puerto Rican? Is it because I don't see the evidence? He has no violence in his life. These guys use these cases to escalate their own careers. And this is what I have a problem about. And that doesn't mean I'm saying anybody's guilty or innocent. Oscar Lugo, I know as a friend. I know, should he have got about 10 years? Yes. Life sentence? Absolutely not. 20 years in prison now, not a ticket against him, no violence. His case itself, no violence, no direct evidence. All his witnesses against him have recanted their testimony, saying they were forced or threatened by the government. They put them all in the same room. These are just some of the things. So I just think that if our justice system is going to work, it's got to work properly for everyone. And if you believe they're guilty, then move their venues. Eric Adams' venue to Long Island, where he can get a fair trial. Not here in the city where everything's stacked against him. And that doesn't mean I'm saying he's innocent. I'm just saying let justice work and let him have his fair trial. Same thing with Puff Daddy. These are terrible crimes that he's being accused of. No different than R. Kelly. My old lawyer, Doug Anton, was one of his attorneys. And they found him guilty on a lot of these charges. Jeffrey Epstein found guilty on a lot of these charges. Do I believe they were guilty? Yes. But in this case, we don't know yet. And why shouldn't they get a fair trial in a community where you'll get a fair jury, not a biased jury? That's all I'm saying. And I'm not sticking up for anybody, any end, because I didn't see the evidence. So I don't want anybody to cross my words and say I'm saying something that I'm not. But if you want to ask me some questions, write into me, send some DMs, follow me, subscribe. I think these cases I just brought up are very interesting cases. I want your take on what I'm talking about, these high-profile guys. And that's another guy, actually, one more. Kamala Harris charged somebody with murder, knew he was innocent, refused to release him from prison, evidence behind him, finally, and he's come out. And he was also a black man, by the way. And she would not release him, knowing he was innocent. He was an innocent man because she wanted to further a career. This isn't how the system's supposed to work. If you know a man's innocent, you're supposed to release that man. They have evidence against him. You don't hold him to further your career. There's a problem with the system because they have too much power and nobody overseeing what they're doing. And it's not fair to some of these lives like Oscar Lugo, like I just said. And I'm going to talk on my next show about Commander Mali that was involved with the Serbian-Kosovo War, Albanian. To me, he's a hero. Everybody should look up to him, in my opinion. Albania should be backing him and pride for him. And because of the war years ago, and I was just in Macedonia visiting him in prison, you couldn't even show the Albanian flag 10 years ago in Macedonia. You would catch a beating, or worse, get killed. You couldn't fly Albanian flag in front of your house. And these are some of the things of the injustice of the criminal system, not just here in America, around the world. Please send your opinions. Follow me, subscribe. I got to get to that 100,000 this month. And questions. And follow me on Instagram, John Elite, Facebook, and my TikTok. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.